Now, earlier today, I caught up with Senator Alex Antic from South Australia. He's a strong Conservative voice in the Liberal Party too. I started off by asking him what went wrong.
Well, that's the trillion-dollar question, Chris. I think it's probably a sum of a number of parts, but the thing that stands out for me mostly, I think, is the failure to deliver on the 2019 Quiet Australians promise. And we saw that in the state election here in South Australia. We had a government that simply didn't relate back to the things which are the core values of the party, which things like individual freedom, freedom of expression, and those sorts of things. And I think we haven't given the voting public in Australia something to aim at. I think when you cannot distinguish yourself enough from the Labor Party and the Greens, this is where you get yourself into trouble. And I think that's what we saw on Saturday, unfortunately.
I think you're right. Is climate change essential in that? Is going to net zero by 2050 a key mistake?
Look, I was never a fan. I think we spoke about it on your show. Net zero, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing more than talking points for Davos bureaucrats and others. And I just don't know why we ever really went down that path. It just doesn't make sense. I think a lot of the Australian voting public lost a lot of skin on that. I think we lost a lot of skin. I think they lost a lot of patience with us at that exact moment. So, look, there was a raft of issues. And, of course, you can't discount the fact that we are looking for a third or fourth term, and we were in the middle of a third one. So, look, I think it's a combination of factors. But ultimately, the Liberal Party has to be the Liberal Party, not an imitation of Labor and the Greens.
But your South Australian colleague, the former Finance Minister Simon Birmingham, says the opposite. He says you've got to go further to the left on climate change and other issues. This is going to really tear the party apart in coming months, isn't it? Trying to work out where you think you should stand on that issue and a range of others.
Yeah, look, I hope that's not the case. I don't think it'll tear the party apart. I mean, you know, John Howard, of course, famously used the term the broad church. I think it is that. Here in South Australia, though, I mean, there are some issues in relation to that. We've had almost 12 to 15 years of moderate faction control, left-wing faction control probably is a better way of putting it. And in that time, if you go back to 2004, we had 8 lower house federal MPs and 6 senators. There's a slight chance it might be down to 2, probably 3, but 2 in the lower house, and you know, it's simply a case of the party sticking true to its values. The dominance of the left in the Liberal Party now needs to end. That time needs to be over.
Yeah, you mentioned individual freedom, personal responsibility, those sorts of core Liberal values. We, of course, endured the pandemic over the past couple of years. The federal government did a lot to keep business and people going through that period. But what about banning Australians from coming home to their own country? What about standing by while the states put on all sorts of draconian measures and hard state borders? Do you think that the federal government has paid a price for any of that?
Well, look, we have seen a drift. We don't know exactly how much of a drift it's going to be in terms of the minor Conservative parties, the One Nations and the UAP. It looks like they'll probably get a handful up across the country, maybe 1 or 2, who knows at this stage. But the reality is that there was a significant drift in that vote. And I've said it for the longest time, the very existence of the minor Conservative parties is an indictment on what we're doing in the Liberal Party. They should be inside our tent. The Liberal Party should be the home for Conservatives. We shouldn't be bleeding people to, you know, those other terms. We saw that with, you know, your colleague Cory Bernardi, who, of course, felt so aggrieved by the manner in which it was going that he went off and started his own party, the Australian Conservatives. So that trend's got to end. We've got to provide a suitable and strong voice for Conservative Australians, Quiet Australians, and indeed the members of Parliament that want to represent them.
And it's very clear, isn't it, that you need to see more women involved in the party, in the parliament and in senior positions. Is it time to forget the ideological objection to quotas? You need more women. Why not set a quota and fill it?
Look, the quotas are never going to be something the Liberal Party is going to be comfortable with. I'm certainly not either. But look, I just think that if you actually go back and read the constitution of the party, the We Believe statement, it's all sound stuff. We don't need to veer from that. We just need to convince those that proffer a different version of the Liberal Party that that's not the way we're going to be. And I was disappointed by Senator Birmingham's comments on Saturday night on the date of the election to suggest that somehow the views of Catherine Deves created a contagion effect on other candidates. It's just fundamentally not right. I mean, the Liberal Party's most left-wing, potentially, I suppose, most left-wing candidates were ultimately rolled by Teal candidates. The Liberal Party structure is not broken. It just needs to get back to what it was doing back in the Howard era. So
how do you get more women into senior positions without a quota?
Well, you just need to keep promoting them. We do what we do. We have lots and lots. I mean, my colleague Nicole Flint, of course, went through the ringer on that, but she didn't get there because of a quota. She got there because she was an outstanding candidate. And I think providing a home for strong Conservative women, promoting them and ensuring that they get all the opportunities they need, that's where we need to go. I just don't think there's any other way of doing it.
Thanks for joining us, Senator. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Chris.